The third appearance to the apostles in Galilee. About a week after the crucifixion, the Jewish leaders had concluded that the Jesus movement had finally been successfully crushed. They were troubled by the persistent rumors that Jesus had risen from the dead, but they trusted that over time these would grow increasingly implausible. After all, they had bribed the guards to spread doubt by repeatedly telling the story that his followers had overpowered them and taken the body. Truth seekers who investigated for themselves would run into this dead end. The leaders grew less suspicious, mainly because Jesus had only appeared to his family and believers, and because the apostles and other faithful were in hiding, not active in public. When the apostles left Jerusalem, Peter took the lead, and from that moment on, he became the head of the apostles. He would remain so until they were scattered by the rising tide of persecution. Jesus had never formally appointed Peter to this authority, nor did his fellow apostles ever officially choose him. It emerged naturally. He took it on as a task, filling the role with the unspoken approval of all. His fellow apostles pressed him into this position and tolerated it because he was their most gifted preacher. From then on, public preaching became the apostles' primary task. When the apostles set out for Galilee early that Monday morning, they also brought Mary, the mother of Jesus, and several other Galilean women back home. What they didn't know was that young John Mark was secretly following them. When they were well past Bethany, he boldly joined them, trusting that by then they wouldn't send him back. On their way to Galilee, the apostles paused several times to share the story of their risen master, and so they didn't arrive in Bethsaida until very late Wednesday evening. All 11 apostles had traveled together from Jerusalem, but Simon Zelotes grew increasingly despondent as they neared Galilee. By the time they reached Bethsaida, he longed to be alone. He decided to leave his brothers and go to his own home. The other apostles spent all of Thursday waiting at Zebedee's house. Nothing happened the entire day, and as evening fell, Peter suggested they go fishing that night. When Peter proposed the fishing trip, all the apostles decided to join him. They toiled with the nets all night, but caught nothing. It didn't bother them much, though. They weren't really trying hard. Out on the water, in a different setting, their tongues loosened, and they collectively processed the tragedy that had struck them so recently in Jerusalem. As dawn broke, they decided to head back to Bethsaida. As they neared the shore, they saw someone standing by a fire near the boat's landing spot. At first, they thought it was John Mark coming to welcome them back, but as they got closer, they realized they were mistaken. The man was too tall to be John. It hadn't occurred to any of them that the man on the shore might be Jesus. It had been his instruction to go to the safety of Galilee, far from Jerusalem, where they'd been holed up behind closed doors, haunted by vivid memories of fear, betrayal, and the crucifixion. He had told them that when they reached Galilee, he would meet them there, and now he was about to fulfill that promise. As they drew nearer, the man on the shore called out, "Hey, boys! Caught anything?" When they answered, "No," he called again, "Cast your net on the right side of the boat. There's plenty of fish there." Though they didn't know it was Jesus giving the advice, they cast the net as instructed, and it was immediately so full they could hardly haul it in. When Jesus called out asking if they'd caught anything, they thought he was a fish merchant. It was common for fishermen, as they approached land, to be hailed by a merchant ready to buy their fresh catch for the fish-drying yards. John Zebedee was quick to catch on. Seeing the heavily laden net, it dawned on him that the man on the shore must be Jesus. As the thought struck him, he leaned toward Peter and whispered, "It's the Master." Peter, ever the man of impulsive action and fervent devotion, leapt into the water the moment John whispered this and swam to shore to reach the Master sooner. His brothers laughed and followed, dragging the net full of fish to the bank. But Peter wasn't the first to reach Jesus. After waking that morning, John Mark had gone to the harbor to greet the apostles. Seeing the boat wasn't coming closer, he ran along the shore and spotted them struggling with the heavy net. Suddenly, he saw a man by a charcoal fire on the beach and realized it was the risen Jesus. The boy raced to him, knelt at his feet, and said, "My Lord and my Master." Jesus began to speak, but not as he had in Jerusalem, where he always greeted everyone with, "Peace be with you." Now, in the Galilean dialect, he spoke casually, "Well, John, I'm glad to see you again here in carefree Galilee, where we can have a good time together. Stay with us, I've got breakfast ready." As John Mark paid his respects to the Master, Peter drew closer. But when he saw the glowing coals, he flinched, involuntarily recalling the midnight charcoal fire in Annas' courtyard where he had denied the Master. Yet Peter steadied himself, knelt at Jesus' feet, and cried out, "My Lord and my Master." The other apostles were thrilled to see Jesus again. They abandoned the net and hurried toward him. Jesus laughed, bringing them back to reality, and called out, "First bring in the fish and grab a few for breakfast. We've got a fire going, and I've baked bread." Peter rushed back to his companions, and together they hauled the net ashore with all their might. When they got their catch onto the beach, they counted 153 large fish. Jesus now invited them all to breakfast. Even the twins, who usually served, were told to sit down. Jesus tasked John Mark with cleaning the fish. Soon after, John handed Jesus 7 good-sized fish, which he cooked over the fire. When they were ready, the boy passed them out. Then Jesus broke the bread and gave it to John Mark, who shared it with the hungry apostles. Once everyone was served, Jesus asked John Mark to sit down too, personally handing him some fish and bread. As they ate, Jesus talked with them, and they reminisced about their shared experiences.